Hey, Jen here. Hope everybody is doing well. I'm just having a day. Um, I'm gonna check and make sure everything is running good, and then I'll get into the myriad of topics that I thought I would touch base on and then move into something else. So let me just do that real quick. Make sure it's working. Thank you for your patience. I hope you're all doing well if anyone decides to watch. Do I need a ring light? Um, like I don't feel like messing with it, so I hope y'all are okay how it is. Uh, life. I'm gonna talk a little bit. I've been watching some of Philip K. Dick's Electric Sheep on Prime, and it's so funny. I didn't know that that was a show on there. I didn't watch it, and they already took it off. But I've been watching a couple episodes of that today, and let's put our like woo woo hats on, our fringe science, fringe reality hats on, and talk a little bit about some of the things that he spoke about. He often liked to dissect reality and take it apart like an onion. And recently, it occurred to me that life by nature is deceptive. Now, I know we're told not to lie, we're told not to be deceived as well. And I think there's a difference between concealment, and again, a lot of it lies with intent. Life doesn't want you to figure it out immediately. There's a lot of mystery to it. Most of us aren't told much about why we're here. I mean, we're told physically, biologically, basically how we get here, but we're not really told much else as far as a species and where we fit. And at the same time, we're told all these different things so that we don't really know where to dwell. And you spend most of your life searching. And some people become experts and masters at skills and skill sets. And those are the wise ones, those are the blessed ones. But we're not all raised like that. And there's so many of us right now searching and seeking. And it's not something that we're going to find in politics, though people are looking there. It's not something we're going to find in entertainment. And we see that now. And people have lost faith in the system as it is, but people have also gained a faith in that life is more than it seems. What do I mean by that? With the Rona shutdowns and lockdowns, people of our generation got to feel a bit of the burden of prior and previous generations. And we also had a chance to slow down and seek. And it put us all on a different rhythm, some of us on a different frequency altogether. In looking at my life and the people around me and my own self, and what I see on the screen with alleged other people, because we know that's deceptive too. Um, from what I've seen, we are all seeking, right? Like that much I know. But there's a general change that has overcome everyone. I kind of lost where I was going with that thought, but it's okay because this is one of those topics where it's a lot of different things happening at the same time. So allow me a little grace and your attention because I know that's hard to come by these days as well. So when Rona happened and everyone had time to slow down and recognize life is fluid, reality by nature seems to be deceptive. It leaves mysteries for us to figure out, probably in part so that we don't get bored. And I'll get to that aspect of things in a minute. Um, and when you start to figure things out, I feel like that's either when you graduate, like you go to the next level, you transcend, you experience death, whatever you want to call that. Um, you know, And I see all these comments and comment sections about people making fun of people who believe in afterlives, but if that were the case, if that were true, if that were real, there wouldn't be so many different venues of escape. Everybody is seeking some form of escapism, and that escapism, and this is the good part, seems to be seeking for the meaning of life. For the longest time, people didn't even ask, like, "What are we doing here? Why am I here? How can I be of service?" Or "What can I build? You know, what can I create while I'm here?" Everybody was just worker bees doing as they was told. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that per se. And again, that lies in intent and drive and motivation. So I'm experiencing things that are amazing on one hand, and I know some of you are too. Amazing. Like you see that reality is kind of opening up for you, and you see, like, I don't wanna call them manifestations per se because I think these terms are overused, but, ask and you shall receive, you're asking or you're speaking and it's becoming, and it's not always a good result, like, we're seeing that. Have we gotten to the point where we've told each other too many stories, or do we need to write better stories? Is it predictive programming, prophetic writing, or are we creating reality with our written words? And now, again, there's too many things running. Because in looking at history too, I see these times about every 100 years where there's this cyclical change that overcomes people. But then they don't really talk about what got them there. They do a little bit. But the villain is taking the place of the victim. I think that witch burnings weren't witch burnings. I think they were probably wise women, business women, women in the community people were jealous of, and women, again, aren't meant to take such a back seat, but I don't mean that in a feministic type of way. I mean life as a whole. I'm not doing a great job at this, so give me a little time. So on one hand, we're seeing all these great things happen and open up, and on the other hand, that's making everything else look really shallow and fake. And we're seeing it with the whole Kirk debacle. I don't know what really happened. I don't know if that boy ever existed, to be honest with you. He looks an awful lot like Brett from the comment section, like a lot. And I've cried on the internet, and I know that real emotion can translate a little strange, but that woman has no grief for her husband. And that wouldn't be so bothersome if I wasn't also seeing that in actual people that I'm around. I got told if I got a doctor to tell you it was normal, would you believe it then? This coming from somebody who's lived with me for 30 plus years, knows that I've worked in the medical field, understands that I've cared for several of our relatives. So even if the medical field is all a lie and we've lost faith in that too at this point, I was still trained and I understand, like, I remember what they tell people and I know what the norm is and what isn't normal. Plus, I'm a physiological human being. I can look at somebody and if they're in bad shape and say, this is not okay. I'm being made to live in a situation that is entirely unhealthy and unsafe for anyone, but I refuse to leave it because my son. But he's an entire different character. My son wouldn't do the things that this person is doing at all. He doesn't even look the same, like body type wise. He sounds the same. He has the same face and whatnot. And I'm going somewhere with this, so thank you for listening. And I don't have anyone to talk to about these strange things that are happening. And I know I'm not alone in this either. But how much of the internet is dead internet? Is there anyone actually watching? Is it just my own household? How many people are actually in the world? They make it look a lot smaller than it is. And then on another hand, they make it look more populated and bigger than it really is. Why am I talking about two different because we're living in one place, it would seem. We're sharing the same overall reality, but we're walking in completely different paths, grooves, just like the Hopi predicted. Predicted or wrote into existence. I don't know anymore. I'm going to pull out a book. And this is for the diehards. This is not going to be a popular video, but it highlights so well. And I want to show you, this is when escapism can be helpful. When did they start with libraries? When did they start having sections and cataloging things as fact or fiction? Mythology simply means it means the same thing as history, but we've come to believe that it means fake. And it's ironic too, where we have at the same time we have these cyclical events, we have all of this media and artwork being burned in like the center of town squares publicly. And then somehow or way or shape or form, people collectively lose their memory and seem to not be able to tell the next generation what's going on. Matt from Quantum of Conscience once called it, he said he thought maybe we were in Baros, the in between, almost like the Christian version of limbo, sort of. Like we just hadn't picked our next life yet. I'm here thinking, look, I'm seeing people that I know, they seem to have flown the cube. There's no one home anymore in some of these vessels. And I'm not saying they're NPC, like I'm not saying to do harm or anything like that would be okay. That's not what I mean at all. I mean, I don't know if they traded places. And I brought that message a couple years ago, and so did that woman in Chicago about musical chairs of the souls. And we've talked about this transmigration thing. But if we are having these cyclical events, if we can learn from them, then maybe we don't have to go that way again in the future. Maybe we can write ourselves and walk ourselves a better path to a better future. I don't know. But I know that a lot of us are seeking and we need answers. And if we're going to participate in escapism, let's try and learn something. So I'm going to bring up a book that is somebody left. Oh, the one person I had watching left. It's actually me who's on here now. But I'm going to pull up a book and I'm going to spend about a half hour, maybe 45 to you, looking all terrible like I do because I had myself a good mom cry a little while ago for my son. And I'm having, once again, a little bit of an existential crisis of faith because I've prayed and prayed and prayed. And I don't think I fasted long enough because there has been no breakthrough for my family. Um, And the crazy thing doesn't go very far anymore, does it? When they accuse somebody of being crazy. I heard Billy Corbin talk about how he saw a reptilian. I saw that interview again recently. And he said it was another celebrity. And he said, it's okay if you don't believe me or you don't accept it. But how dare people question like what I saw? Like why would I lie about such a thing as that? Um, we have to stop trying to force each other to see things the same way, to live the same life. I'll tell you something else. People have lost faith in the psychiatric industry. Totally. They're not, it seems like, I mean, things are getting worse, not better. And so all these things that are supposed to be helping us don't seem to be helping us. This is why people have turned to holistic means and alternative methods. But let's take a look at this book. And again, it's not for the faint of heart, but if you have time and nothing better to do, and you don't mind sharing some of your time with me, I'll read to you. Picture it, Sicily. No, picture it, France, little over 100 years ago. This is a classic. It's called A Tale of Two Cities. It is another time in history when they thought it was the end of the world. It's a time in history we're not told a lot about. In fact, France isn't talked about that much in America, though we have their colors on our flag, though they settled much of our East Coast. I didn't learn much of anything about France. So we're going to put ourselves in their shoes. Now, again, I don't know if they classify this as fiction at this point in time. These events did occur. If these characters or people actually lived, I'm not sure. But everything else is based in reality. And let's see if we can learn anything. But it's a really difficult read, so I will explain what I can and we will learn what we can from it. This is book the first, so it's the first book, Recalled to Life. Part one, the period. Now, this is what I mean about two parallel dimensions living at the same time. And we're experiencing that now. And I know statistics are statistically unreliable because people lie. But if statistics can be believed, we have a time when homelessness has never been bigger, but it's also a time when people have never had more luxury and comfort. Dionysus, like, would be in heaven. We're actually going to talk about that character in one of the next videos. If you're into Greek mythology, you might want to check the next couple of videos out because I want to talk about that again. We've talked about it before, but there are different levels and learning stages, and this is why we build as we go. So if you're missing something, you might have to go back to certain videos, especially like my testimony. I talk about it because I feel like supernatural events really highlight that there is something else going on here in life, and it really highlights that we do have a creator who is active and present. We could debate all day about who that is, what that is, how that happens, but it's here. So anyways, the period. Picture it. France. They think it's Armageddon, it's the end of the world. Everybody is poop poor, and I mean dirt poor, okay? People are selling their children. Children are being bought and used as slaves because they're the only ones small enough to clean the chimneys. You probably didn't know that. Like in Mary Poppins, they make that look so fun, right? It wasn't grown men doing it. It was the children doing that. That's another, slavery is a big reason for child trafficking. And a lot of people like just dismiss basic slavery as like, oh, that doesn't happen anymore. But it does. There were orphans everywhere. There used to be orphanages. Where did they get all the orphans? They were created. And by created, I mean the parents were removed from the picture. I don't mean they came from a cabbage patch. That is another people need to learn how to read symbols a lot better in our generation. They're taking things too literally, and the actual stories, the historicity of it all, the legitimacy is passing them by. And so they're having to fill in the gaps sometimes where fantastical things don't need to be. So I don't think we should always have to start with high strangeness either. This is basic everyday life where you have access to things that people, at least in the last 100 years, have not had access to: comforts, travel, convenience. But then you have people who don't have basic necessity. So it says it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. That's what you're seeing now with like the Charlie Kirk thing. They are really reining in young kids. Those kids were raised on the screen. They can't tell that it's not real. It's their version of wrestling and a soap opera. It appeals to both genders. It's not specific, right? And if I wasn't such a patriot myself, I would say it looks very, loyalistic, and that's not a good thing. Like, loyalistic means you're just gonna do what you're told no matter what, and we did have those people at the time of, World War II, and now there's a lot I'm not gonna debate politics with people or anything, I'm just talking about basic human rights, there's a point to things. So that's what they're talking about. You have where everybody is searching and seeking spiritually, and some are really believing in that, and then you have other people who are putting their belief in the wrong things because now they're trying to rebuild the system, right? They know that my generations and the older ones have completely lost faith in it. They know we're exhausted, that we don't wanna do this in this way anymore, and you have people saying, "Well, you're just lazy." Has nothing to do with lazy. It has everything to do with basic freedom, and for people saying, "Oh, you're gonna be a slave, digital ID," well, what's the difference? I'm not talking about chips now, I'm not talking about invasive, I'm talking about digital ID. What's the difference in how we're living now? You still do everything online, right? It's just a central hub. Now, once they actually wanna put something in you, that's when I would worry, but if you're already online all the time, that sort of thing shouldn't bother you. Again, this truther community, these people want to sway public opinion for very specific reasons. Some of it, they'll tell you straight out, don't go to Rumble, don't go to TikTok because they've been here since the beginning. They have stock in YouTube. Sometimes it's that simple. You have to really look at people's motivations and then you can see why they're doing what they're doing. Because at first it might not make sense, right? Okay, so sorry. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven. We were all going direct the other way. In short, the period was so far like the present period that some of its noisiest authorities insisted on its being received, for good or evil, in the superlative degree of comparison only. That's poetic writing. I can't really explain that. You either understand it or not. He's comparing, the present time to a time like this, and he's saying that just like now, people are asking for a new system, they're asking for the cure to all their problems. There was a king with a large jaw and a queen with a plain face on the throne of England. There was a king with a large jaw and a queen with a fair face on the throne of France. In both countries, it was clearer than crystal to the lords of the state preserves of loaves and fishes that things in general were settled forever. It was the year of our Lord, and again, everyone talk like that. Now, Lord, when it's not capitalized, it just means Lord of the land. Like we have landlords now. Back then, you said this is the Lord of the land. What land? Well, the land you're living on. That's who you pay taxes to or dues to or rent to. All right. The word Lord didn't come with Baal or whatever it is. You got to be careful who you're listening to online. You have to really be willing to read and not just repeat what other people say. And we've done that. Like this book is not for beginners. You have to want to know human behavior. You have to want to know cultural history and you have to want to prevent it. You have to want to prevent the worst things from happening. So that's when you have to use your desire for escapism in this time. If you're going to be on the internet, try and do it in a way that as to which you're learning things that you can apply to the current situation and your life in general. So the year of our Lord capitalized, that means Christ, right? AC, that they're changing it now and again. I'm a little older than some of you, so I know it was BC, before Christ. All time was named after him. AD was after death. That's how it was. Everyone just knew. And this is why I'm still on the fence about, is it the little season, because it very well could be. Because everyone knew. It was the year of our Lord, 1775, and our Lord is capitalized. That's Christ. 1775. So One zero, wait, no, 1775. All right. Spiritual revelations were conceded. Now, this is important to pay attention to, and I do talk while I'm reading because that's how I avoid copyright. We're allowed to do that. It's called adding commentary. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to read the book. You can read excerpts, you just can't read the whole thing. So it was the year of our Lord 1775. Okay. 1775. So that's right before things were popping off here. Now, this is what I want you to pay attention to because this is why you can't dwell in one paradigm. If you understand what year this is and what's going on in France, and you know what's happening on the shores here in America, see, nobody's even watching, and you know what's happening on the shores here in America, all right, you'll start to be able to have a bigger picture of history. And the better your view, the more information you have, the better decisions you can make moving forward. So, what's also interesting to note is Joseph Smith would soon enter the picture and allegedly find these plates in the Americas with inscriptions on them that were supposed to be Moses's. So keep these things in mind as we're reading this. So it was the year of our Lord 1775. Spiritual revelations were conceded to England at that favored period. So, as at this, Mrs. Southcott had recently attained her 25th blessed birthday, of whom a prophetic private in the Life Guards had heralded the sublime appearance by announcing the arrangements were made for the swallowing up of London and Westminster. So the politics of what's going on in America are affecting what's going on across the pond. All right. And spiritual revelations were conceded to England at that favored period. So let's continue. Even the Cock Lane ghost had been laid only around a dozen of years after wrapping out its messages as the spirits of this very last or very year last past, supernaturally deficient in originality, wrapped out theirs. Okay, so what he's saying now is, and again, I do have to translate because this is a very old book. He's telling you about how at this time spirituality was peaking across the pond because again, everybody is seeking, right? So not only is it two worlds walking side by side, the haves and the have-nots, and that's what they were called, the haves and the have-nots. People who have and people who have not. That's why the queen just saying let them eat cake. Cake was an extravagant thing. It was a joke, it was a mockery, and it kind of showed how out of touch with her people she was. I know that people look at royalty and the monarchy as like a negative and bad thing and kind of make a joke about it today. But if we quit making a celebrity out of everything, we would give people a better chance to move and operate in this realm and make positive change. That's a pretty nice title to have. And it brings a lot of responsibility. If I had such a title, I don't know that I would accept it. And I don't know that I wouldn't be out there helping every day, like just doing whatever I could. Um, so when she said, let them eat cake, that's one of the reasons the monarchy lost their heads, is because they were either so vile and wicked to say such a thing, to expect let them eat cake. You know that they're not going to eat cake. What do you need to make cake? You need eggs, milk, flour, and all those things were off limits for the have nots because they'd gotten so expensive, you see? So he's telling you the rich people with the money that they did have, they were being swindled by these spiritists who would knock on the tables and stuff like, "Oh, your dead sister is here and she says," and it was just right then all this was breaking out and people were seeing the fakery and the sham that was their everyday life and the disparity between the haves and the have-nots. And that's the crux of how this tale can help us today. Oh, I have news about royalty as well. I heard a rumor from another TI I don't know if I should say it in this video and then retitle it, or if I should do a separate upload. Nobody's even here. I don't know. I'll think about it and maybe I'll say it at the end. Okay, so that's where we're at. Okay. And that's what he's saying. Mere messages in the earthly order of events had lately come to the English crown and people from a congress of British subjects in America. So they're getting news from the Americas, right? From their British compatriots, British heads of state and whatnot, but their titles really don't matter there yet. Do you see what I mean? So they're sending messages back and forth. And what was said, it says from a congress of British subjects in America. Congress just means a group of, which, strange to relate, have proved more important to the human race than any communications yet received through any of the chickens of the Cock Lane brood. So he's making fun there of all the spiritists of that day, because that's who he was just talking about. That's who he's referring to. But for some reason, something's going on there that's really going to affect the whole human race, he's saying. What is that? What could that event be? And again, there's a lot of hints to these things, and I come across another old book. It's called Earth on Fire. I think I told you guys about it. I might read it on here because if it is Satan's short season, these are the places we're going to find it, is looking at things from this recent history. A little further, like you have to look at World War II as well, but so it says France less favored on the whole as to matters spiritual than her sister of the shield and trident. Shield and trident, is that England? Rode with exceeding smoothness downhill, making paper money and spending it. So France was more focused on materialism than spiritual matters. Under the guidance of her Christian pastors, and it's talking, when it's referring to her, it's talking about France. So it says, under the guidance of her Christian pastors, she entertained herself, besides, with such humane achievements as sentencing a youth to have his hands cut off, his tongue torn out with pincers, and his body burned alive because he had not kneeled down in the rain to do honor to a dirty procession of monks, which passed within his view at a distance of some 50 or 60 yards. And what is this exactly? This is what Christ preached against. This is why he came up against the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the religious hat wearers of that day. I mean, it's bloody simple, like to borrow a phrase from across the pond. It's so easy. And I feel like the Bible is like that. I feel like it's one of those things. You remember that test when you're in, like, I don't know if it's second or third grade, and they give you this paper, right? And they give you all these instructions to do, but the very first thing says, read all of this first before you do anything. And the first thing is put your name on it. And then the last thing after it says, circle this, do that. And everybody's just trying to get through it fast. It's like the tortoise and the hare. You got to the bottom and it said you weren't supposed to do any of that. All you had to do was write your name. But the teacher could tell who had followed directions very easily and who did not. I feel the Bible's like that in a lot of ways. Like, it points to a lot of things very blatantly. But if I don't want to, and I don't want to say NPC, I don't want to say asleep. Like if you're just not paying attention, you can miss these very, like the nose on your face. And we're all guilty of that at times. So these are the religious zealots of that time, the cloisters, and that's something else. Yes, there are times when God will put you away, and rightfully so, like right now with me being penitent and repentant and all this, and especially doing it for my sons and their health and whatnot. Um, and just the overall, be a better person, type thing, self-improvement thing. Um, you're not supposed to hide yourself away from the world like that forever, right? So again, you have the pros and the cons, but everything's very polarized at this time in history as well. So that's like a bunch of priests or monks. I can't see Franciscan monks ever acting like that, but back then in this time, I can see it because you had everybody swung to repentance. not everybody, but society as like a whole kind of swung to being more like fundamental and Puritan style type ways, uh, because of how I don't know how overtly hedonistic that their society had become. I mean, I was just watching something yesterday about what is his name? Baraggio, was it Baraggio? How they burned their Bonfire of the Vanities, how they burned paintings, epic, like beautiful works of art of that day, because they would show women naked as nymphs and whatnot in the woods, together and dancing or what have you. I don't know. I'm torn on that subject because I think the human body is beautiful and I don't think we should be ashamed of it. We never were ashamed. But then you have people that say, you dummy, don't you know you should put some clothes on? So, like, polarized, right? And this binary way of thinking because we're two brained. For some reason, we've got this two brain thing happening. Okay, so I'm sorry. Here we go. Now they're trying to stress there how strict like their rulers of that day were, and it was the religious order were the people who ruled things then. I think it's still that way. It's still a Roman thing. And I think targeting it kind of starts in some of the churches in small towns. Like, I'm just being honest. I love God. I love Jesus, right? And I do love my community and my family. But the church as institutions, the shelters, they have become harbors and harbingers of the things that they're supposed to prevent and protect against. And again, you have this polarity and this inversion. We are reaping the opposite of what we're saying we're sowing, or some are. So it's a hard time. Okay. It is likely enough that rooted in the woods of France and Norway, there were growing trees when that sufferer was put to death, already marked by woodman fate to come down and be sawn into boards to make a certain movable framework with a sack and a knife in it, terrible in history. So he's telling you, again, he very wordy about it, but he's telling you how cruel these people were at that time, and that was all the material needed to do what they said they were going to do to that young man. It is likely enough that in the rough outhouses of some tillers of the heavy lands adjacent to Paris, there were sheltered from the weather that very day rude carts bespattered with rustic mire, snuffed about by pigs and roosted in by poultry, which the farmer, Death, had already set apart to be his tumbrils of the revolution. But that woodman and that farmer, though they had worked unceasingly, so he's referring to Death right now and revolution as the woodman and the farmer. And you can tell that by the capitalizations of woodman and farmer. And I know I am kind of teaching here in this area because I know historical literature. Um, and poetic writing and using metaphor and simile. And so I'm trying to set that apart for people. It tells us right in scripture, people who don't understand parables, you are of your father still. You're of the wrong one. When you're applying literal physical manifestation to everything that you see or read, you're not in the kingdom that you think you're in. Okay, and so this is why I'm trying to help people understand, like, this type of writing because it's imperative. It's imperative. Okay. So he taught that's how I know too, is because in the sentence before, he capitalizes death and revolution, and then right next he capitalizes woodman and farmer. So he is describing the revolution and death as being the woodman and the farmer. One of them is the woodman, and the other one's the farmer of that day and age. And this is how they're reaping. It's harvest time for souls, is basically what he's saying. Man, I love how he used to write. It's epic. So it says, but that woodman and that farmer, though they work unceasingly, work silently, and no one heard them as they went about with muffled tread. The rather for as much as to entertain any suspicion that they were awake as to be ascetical and traitorous. So again, that's another way of saying life is deceptive and death sneaks up on you sometimes, like a thief in the night. And this is why I have to do a video explaining to people that another meaning for the word rapture is your death. It is the transcendence, it is the transition to the next life for you, the next state of life, whatever. That's what that means. In some interpretations, when does Jesus come for you on high? How many people say that when they're passing? I see him. I see him. He's coming. I see the angel. Some people, not everybody. I've been there with people who have said they've seen relatives and whatnot. Very sweet elderly people. Of course, the very nice and kind ones. I haven't really seen much of them. Anyways, in England, there was scarcely an amount of order and protection to justify much national boasting. Daring burglaries by armed men, so house and home invasions, okay? Home invasions are happening and highway robberies took place in the capital itself every night. Families were publicly cautioned not to go out of town without removing their furniture to upholsterers' warehouses for security. This is what I was talking about yesterday, raping and pillaging and all that type of stuff. But this is like councilmen. This is like, these are the elitists because those are the only people able to protect themselves, able to protect their belongings. And they're telling you that this is a nightly event, right? Much like we're living in now. So you can change the armed men burglaries to home invasions and highway robberies to carjackings, all right? Just so you can kind of relate it. Um, and that's why I got suspicious about that picture that St. Faustina said, well, to hang on every Catholic door during World War II in Poland, because those people were spared. I'm not saying Jesus ain't good, and I'm not saying Jesus doesn't work through people or what have you. I'm saying I know symbols and how they operate, and that was one way of them saying, "Hey, don't hurt anyone in this house. These are important people," right? It's almost like hiding in plain sight. They didn't go away to a bunker, they stayed, but they had that, so they were safe. All right, anyway, I'm trying to get you in the shoes of these people so you are invested and you care and you see how they cope with their problems. And being recognized and challenged by his fellow tradesmen, whom he stopped in his character of the captain, gallantly shot him through the head and strode away. Okay, so this is saying it was an actual tradesman, one of the highway robbery men, who was actually recognized. And he created a character, like we have like vigilantes. He called himself the captain, but he got shot. The mail was waylaid by 7 robbers. That's another thing. If you watch our regular mail shut down, and I see they're all using these vans now. If you watch the regular mail shut down, there is martial law. That's one of the other like when that stops, that's what that whole movie, The Postman, you're supposed to care about the mail. Most people don't want their mail, right? Most people don't want it. They don't care. But that's one thing they're not allowed to touch. You send mail to somebody, it's got to be opened by that person. So that's a good way to send information still to this day, just for people who want to know. All right. The male was waylaid by 7 robbers, and the god shot their dead. Oh, shot 3 dead, and then got shot dead himself by the other 4 in this story, in consequence of the failure of his ammunition. After which the male was robbed in peace. That magnificent potentate, the Lord Mayor of London, was made to stand and deliver on Turnham Green by one highwayman. So it's like Robin Hood. You have some of these highwaymen who are actually trying to like do props for the poor people. So they actually made the mayor of London deliver the mail, who despoiled the illustrious creature in sight of all his retinue. Okay, I'm not going to tell you what that means. If you don't understand what despoiled means, I'm not going to tell you. Prisoners in London, what are they called? Gallows. That's, I don't know if that's a typo or how they spelled it back in the day, in the old timey days. Prisoners in London gallows fought battles with their turnkeys, and the majesty of the law fired blunderbusses in among them, loaded with rounds of shot and ball. Thieves snipped off diamond crosses from the necks of noble lords at court drawing rooms. Musketeers went into St. Giles's to search for contraband goods, and the mob fired on the musketeers, the 3 musketeers, and the musketeers fired on the mob. And nobody thought any of these occurrences much out of the common way. So he's telling you there's something popping off all over the place, all of the time, even to the rich. Um, And it can be comical in a way because you've got the musketeers and the highwaymen, and it is kind of with that Robin Hood-esque attitude, like steal from the rich, give to the poor type of thing. In the midst of them, the hangman, ever busy and ever worse than useless. So this is the person who's at the gallows who hangs people, the executioner. So he's saying, in the midst of all this, the hangman, ever busy, meaning he's always at work, right? He's there's never there's never I don't know how to say this without saying it. In the midst of them, the hangman was always busy. He was constantly executing people, okay? Ever busy and ever worse than useless, was in constant requisition, now stringing up long rows of miscellaneous criminals. And that's what I want to know too with like these ICE people. If these people are undocumented, how do you know who you're grabbing? Oh, well, they committed crimes. How do you know if they're undocumented who they are and what they did? None of this makes any sense to me, but nobody asks questions. It's like they're having another lockdown again by just dissuading people from going, out of their houses. But again, it's all these cities that are basically movie sets. The whole city is like where did that one young man just he went running down in his britches? That one rapper, the Call Me by My Name guy. Studio City, right? Chicago, LA, um Atlanta sometimes. These places, Philadelphia, New York, these places are filled with actors, like legitimate actors. So you never know what's real on TV that they show you. Go by what's happening around you. Okay, so now he says, now he's stringing up long rows of miscellaneous criminals, now hanging a housebreaker on a Saturday who had been taken on Tuesday. Wow, that's quick. So basically, he's telling you that they're taking people without due process, with no trial of their peers. They're just, what would you say? Not even booking them by today's standards, not reading them their rights, just stringing them up, right? They're taken in one day, probably on a busload, probably much like a dog warden goes into the center of town. They probably round up some quota to make what did they say in this golden age? To clean up the cities because it's a beautiful city and you can't have it looking like that. What with people? I mean, I understand what he's saying, but there's a better solution to that problem, and it's called feed them, clothe them. Yeah. And he could. People like that, with the platforms they have, if they're real people, they could. So now hanging a housebreaker, that's somebody who broke into a house on Saturday who had been taken on Tuesday. Now burning people in the hand at Newgate by the dozen, and now burning pamphlets at the door of Westminster Hall. Today, taking the life of an atrocious murderer, and tomorrow of a wretched pilferer who had robbed a farmer's boy of sixpence. For 6 pennies, this dude died. All these things and 1,000 like them came to pass in and close up the dear old year 1775, environed by them while the woodman and the farmer worked unheeded, those two of the large jaws and those other two of the plain and the fair faces. He's referring back to the queen and king of both France and England, trod with stir enough and carried their divine rights with a high hand. Thus did the year 1775 conduct their greatness, capital G, and myriads of small creatures, the creatures of this chronicle among the rest, along the roads that lay before them. So he's saying that the royalty that were the authorities of that time ruled with a heavy hand. They're peasants or their people. So this is part two, the mail. It was the Dover road that lay on a Friday night late in November, before the first of the persons with whom this history has business. The Dover road lay, as to him, beyond the Dover mail, as it lumbered up Shooter's Hill. He walked uphill in the mire by the side of the mail, as the rest of the passengers did, not because they had the least relish for walking exercise under the circumstances, but because the hill, and the harness, and the mud, and the mail were all so heavy that the horses had 3 times already come to a stop, besides once drawing the coach across the road with the mutinous intent of taking it back to Blackheath. That's a mouthful. Okay, so basically, this is a mailman, and he's having a hard time because it's raining and the roads were all made of dirt. Which honestly, all this concrete that we have going on, these add to like climate warming or whatever they want to call it. Like we're told the earth gets burned up. These are reasons why. Natural fires start, things dry out because of things we do. It's a fact. I'm not saying I buy into like the things they're saying. I'm just saying our actions have consequences. And it's, the rest of the world, if you can't tell by all the people that are big YouTubers now that are from across the pond and how they're very interested in our politics, there's 5 people watching. I heard that there's going to be a new monarch in America from a little bird. I might do an upload on that. I don't know. I might just, it's like a 2-minute story. I might tell it at the end of this video. We'll see. So, anyways, this is a mailman, and he's going through all this, because there used to be the oath that they take. It was like through rain, through hail, through snow, and like we had to learn that in school. I thought it was really dumb. But they want you to know like how important the mail is and like how it runs society. It's very strange, the whole. But back then, back in the day, you judged how things were with your government and with your economic health, right? By the mail. Did it get there on time? Did something delay it? What delayed it? Was it with other cargo? Like, do you know what I mean? All kind of things work into that. So physical mail, whenever that would stop, they knew that it was a time of war, usually. So he's saying that the horses are already having a hard time. They're not helping much. He's trying to pull the mail and the horse harness. He's pulling the horses. It's in reverse, right? With drooping heads and tremulous tails, they mashed their way through the thick mud, floundering and stumbling between whiles as if they were falling to pieces at the larger joints. As often as the driver rested them and brought them to a stand with a weary, "Whoa, ho, so ho, then." That's how that's his like cue words for the horses. The near leader violently shook his head and everything upon it, like an unusually emphatic horse, denying that the coach could be got up the hill. Whenever the leader made this rattle, the passenger started, as a nervous passenger might, and was disturbed in mind. There was a steaming mist in all the hollows, and it had roamed in its forlornness up the hill like an evil spirit seeking rest and finding none. A clammy and intensely cold mist, it made its slow way through the air in ripples that visibly followed and overspread one another as the waves of an unwholesome sea might do. It was dense enough to shut out everything from the light of the coach lamps, but these its own workings, and a few yards of road, and the reek of the laboring horses steamed into it as if they had made it all. 2 other passengers beside the one were plodding up the hill by the side of the mail. All 3 were wrapped to the cheekbones and over the ears and wore jack boots. So this is telling you about the people. It's not just the mail carrier, right? Because if you had to go somewhere, you went with whoever was in town at that moment. Sometimes they had a, what is he called? I just saw it on Little House on the Prairie. Um, Carriage or whatever, a daily one, a morning one, and trains and all this, that, and the other. But sometimes you would ride with the mail carriage. Carriage? I don't know. Not one of the 3 could have said from anything he saw what either of the 2 was like. So he's saying um they're not really talking much, they don't know each other. They're all just they want you to get the idea of the mood right now of how gritty and tough the time is and how kind of muddy everything is. And that affects things too. Like that affects morale and your mood, and cleanliness has a lot to do with it. Think of mud floods. Not one of the 3 could have said from anything he saw what either of the other 2 was like, and each was hidden under almost as many wrappers from the eyes of the mind as from the eyes of the body of his 2 companions. In those days, travelers were very shy of being confidential on a short notice for anybody on the road, might be a robber or in league with robbers. As to the latter, when every posting house and alehouse could produce somebody in the captain's pay, ranging from the landlord to the lowest stable nondescript, it was the likeliest thing upon the cards. So that's telling you anybody could have been a highwayman with this captain. He was like the villain, I guess, of this time. That's who they keep referring to. And they're saying anyone could have been on his payroll, right? He's like the he's like the leader of the mob or the gang, whatever you want to call it. So the guard of the Dover Mail thought to himself that Friday night in November 1775, lumbering up Shooter's Hill as he stood on his own particular perch behind the mail, beating his feet and keeping an eye and a hand on the arm chest before him, where a loaded blunderbuss lay at the top of 6 or 8 loaded horse pistols deposited on a substratum of cutlass. The Dover mail was in its usual genial position that the guards suspected the passengers suspected one another, and the guard they all suspected everybody else. And the coachman was sure of nothing but the horses, as to which cattle he could, with a clear conscience, have taken his oath on the two testaments that they were not fit for the journey. This is funny. Okay, so this is telling you about the passengers, and it's also telling you about the times that they're living in. They're saying everybody from the lowest stable boy to the queen is in a state of distrust of each other. And sadly, again, this is where we find ourselves in another time in history, okay, that we're dealing with kind of that same thing all over again. And it again, it's cyclical, but let's go outside of that path. If it's a spiral, let's make some small changes this time. Let's put up our forgiveness and our mercy and our grace meters, and just not go to the places where we have gallows in town squares, because they're talking about it. Like, they're talking about it. I don't That's why I don't think, like even Megan Fox, when she said, "We don't really need humans anymore. What do we need them for? Well, we like Mrs. Kirk, but we don't need the other ones. What do we even keep them around for anymore?" Like, are they all just AI things? Is she not a real person? I don't like, why would you say that? "Whoa ho," said the coachman. "So then, one more pull and you're at the top, and be damned to you, for I've had trouble enough to get you to it. Joe." "Hello," the guard replied. "What o'clock do you make it, Joe?" "10 minutes good past 11." He asked Joe what time it was, and Joe told him it's 10 past 11, 11:10. "My blood!" So that's like, "My lord, it's late," vexed the coachman, "and not a top of shooters yet. Tisk, get on with you." I might change some of the words just to keep it friendly. The emphatic horse, cut short by the whip in a most decided negative, made a decided scramble for it, and the 3 other horses followed suit. Let me let me just let you know real quick. My dad got this book for me. It was like one of the school editions or whatever. It was really big. It had a nice cover on it, and he had me. I was very young reading this, and I'm just remembering the time that I had with it. I was the kid who at 3, I had to write out my alphabet or I could not have breakfast, like, there was none of that. I was always hungry as a child. Our parents are a different breed now, like, I don't know what to say, like, did we coddle them? I don't know. I don't know what happened, because they just don't even behave like the same people anymore as far as personality-wise. I don't know what went wrong with us, but I know we need a lot of grace and forgiveness in this time, just like they did in this time. Okay. So he's having a time with the horses. He says, once more the Dover mail struggled on, with the jackboots of its passengers squashing along by its side. They had stopped when the coach stopped. Okay. They had stopped when the coach stopped, and they kept close company with it. If any one of the three had had the hardihood to propose to another to walk on a little ahead into the mist and darkness, he would have put himself in a fair way of getting shot instantly as a highwayman. He's saying that's how suspicious they were of each other. Everybody was really nervous of each other because nobody trusted each other. And we're having that again. That started at the beginning of Rona with they wanted you first to like not gather, right? And then you can't be around each other. They wanted to see, it was all a beta test. It was to see what our triggers were. And for most of us, our triggers were our children. And so now they're manipulating us through they're going to, that, like, if it gets to chips, they're going to say it is to stop the trafficking of children. Well, don't you want your children safe? Don't you want the children to be safe? Don't you want to know they're safe? Okay. So the last burst carried the mail to the summit of the hill. The horses stopped to breathe again, and the guard got down to skid the wheel for the descent and opened the coach door to let the passengers in. Joe, cried the coachman in a warning voice, looking down from his box. What do you say, Tom? They both listened. I say a horse at a canter coming up, Joe. Oh, great. So they're already not trusting anyone in the whole company. And now there's a lone horse coming up in the back of them in this muddy hill, right? And it's dark and misty. And these people already don't trust each other. But now they trust this guy coming or whatever, even less, right? So they're all going to be on guard. I say a horse at a gallop, Tom. So he's saying it's not just a canter. That horse is galloping, returned the guard, leaving his hold of the door and mounting nimbly to his place. Gentlemen, in the king's name, all of you. So that's like he's saying gladiator. What do they call? Did they call themselves the gladiators? What were they? And mount up. Regulators, mount up. That's basically what they're saying. So he's getting the guys ready. So with this hurried adjuration, he cocked his blunderbuss and stood on the offensive. So they're all on guard waiting for whoever this is approaching. The passenger booked by this history. Wait. The passenger booked by this history was on the coach step. Okay, getting in. The two other passengers were close behind him and about to follow. So everybody, the people who were just riding along, they're trying to like just not be seen and hide back in the carriage, right? They all looked from the coachman to the guard and from the guard to the coachman and listened. The coachman looked back and the guard looked back. And even the emphatic leader pricked up his ears and looked back without contradicting. That's the horse. The stillness consequent on the cessation, on the end of the rumbling and laboring of the coach, added to the stillness of the night, made it very quiet indeed. So they all stopped. He had the other guys at attention, right? And the passengers, the regular people, were trying to just hide. The panting of the horses communicated a tremulous motion to the coach as if it were in a state of agitation. So now the carriage has started to sway. The hearts of the passengers beat loud enough perhaps to be heard, but at any rate, the quiet pause was audibly expressive of people out of breath and holding the breath and having the pulses quickened by expectation. So now like they can hear their hearts beating in their ears, so much so that they probably wonder if somebody else can hear it, right? When you're hiding or it's like a scary movie and you're watching it, you know that feeling of like, don't move, don't breathe. The sound of a horse at a gallop came fast and furiously up the hill. So ho, the guard sang out as loud as he could roar. You there, stand, I shall fire. The pace was suddenly checked, and with much splashing and floundering, a man's voice called from the mist. Is that the Dover mail? Never you mind what it is, the guard retorted. What are you? Is that the Dover mail? Why do you want to know? I want a passenger if it is. Oh gosh, it sounds like a marshal. What passenger? Mr. Jarvis Lorry. The our booked passenger showed in a moment that it was his name. The guard, the coachman, and the two other passengers eyed him distrustfully. Keep where you are, the guard called to the voice in the mist, because if I should make a mistake, it could never be set right in your lifetime. Gentleman of the name of Lorry, answer straight. So he's saying, which one of you is Lorry? What is the matter? Asked the passenger then with mildly quavering speech. Who wants me? Is it Jerry? I don't like Jerry's voice. If it is Jerry, growled the guard to himself, he's hoarser than suits me, is Jerry. Yes, Mr. Lorry. What is the matter? A dispatch sent after you from over yonder, T and Company. So this guy he's an important guy, and this is his assistant, I think, thus far. I know this messenger guard, said Mr. Lorry, getting down into the road, assisted from behind more swiftly than politely by the other two passengers. So they basically kicked him out of who immediately scrambled into the coach, shut the door, and pulled up the window. So they basically like ushered him off those steps and they ran in there and hid. He may come close. There's nothing wrong. I hope there ain't, but I can't take no make so nation sure that tarnation? I don't know. Hello, you. Well, and hello, you, said Jerry more hoarsely than before. Come on at a foot pace, do you mind? And if you've got holsters to saddle, don't let me see your hand go near him. So he's telling him, don't touch your gun, for I'm a devil at a quick mistake. And when I make one, it takes the form of lead. So now let's get a look at you. I wonder if it's a woman. The figures of a horse and rider came slowly through the eddying mist and came to the side of the mail where the passenger stood. The rider stooped and, casting up his eyes at the guard, handed the passenger a small folded paper. The rider's horse was blown, and both horse and rider were covered with mud from the hoofs of the horse to the hat of the man. Keep where you are, the guard called to the voice in the mist, because if I should make a mistake, I could never. No, that's. Yeah, it didn't go. Sorry about that. Guard, said the passenger in a tone of quiet business confidence. The watchful guard, with his right hand at the stock of his raised blunderbuss, that's his gun, his left at the barrel, and his eye on the horseman, answered curtly, Sir, there's nothing to apprehend. I belong to Tellson's Bank. You must know Tellson's Bank in London. I'm going to Paris on business. A crown to drink. I may read this? If so be as you're quick, sir. So they went through all this just for him to ask if he could read this note that was obviously went through Hades to get to this guy, this message. He opened it in the light of the coach lamp on that side and read first to himself and then aloud, Waited over for Mademoiselle. It's not long, you see, guard. Jerry, say that my answer was recalled to life. Okay, so that's his reply to whatever the written messages that he got, and that's the title of this chapter. Interesting. Jerry started in his saddle. That's a blazing strange answer, too, said he at his hoarsest. Wonder what's wrong with the guy. That's why I thought maybe it was a woman if he's talking like that. Take the message back, and they will know that I received this as well as if I wrote. Make the best of your way. Good night. So he's like, be on your way. And now this guy probably his horse needs a rest in a water, and he probably needs a meal and some, hot clothes. But this is how things were back then, and everything was an event, right? And everything was chaotic, right? And I was thinking of that. Not only are you living your story, but you're living a story with other people, right? We share a reality, but we also have our own little lives that we lead in our head and outside of our head. And then you have a different reality or story, part of your story with each person that you know and each person. So we have a life can be complicated, I guess is what I mean to say by that. Okay, with those words, the passenger opened the coach door and got in, not at all assisted by his fellow passengers who had expeditiously secreted their watches and purses in their boots. They were hiding their belongings, their valuables, and were now making a general pretense of being asleep, with no more definite purpose than to escape the hazard of originating any other kind of action. So they're just trying to avoid the situation and pretend like they're asleep, kind of like people do now with their earbuds. The coach lumbered on again with heavier wreaths of mist closing round it as it began the descent. The guard soon replaced his blunderbuss, that's his piece, in his arm chest, and having looked to the rest of its contents, and having looked to the supplementary pistols that he wore in his belt, looked to a smaller chest beneath his seat, in which there were a few smith's tools, a couple of torches, and a tinderbox. What does that mean, recalled to life? For he was furnished with that completeness that if the coach lamps had been blown and stormed out, which did occasionally happen, he had only to shut himself up inside, keep the flint and steel sparks well off the straw, and get a light with tolerable safety and ease, if he were lucky in 5 minutes. They're saying that's how much gunpowder he had on him. He was packing. Tom sloughed softly over the coach roof. Hello, Joe. Did you hear the message? I did, Joe. What did you make of it, Tom? Nothing at all, Joe. That's a coincidence, too, the guard mused, for I made the same of it myself. Jerry, left alone in the midst and darkness, dismounted meanwhile, not only to ease his spent horse, but to wipe the mud from his face and shake the wet out of his hat brim, which might be capable of holding about a half a gallon, after standing with the bridle over his heavily splattered arm until the wheels of the mail were no longer within hearing and the night was quite still again, he turned to walk down the hill. After that there gallop from Temple Bar, old lady. I won't trust you forelegs till I get you on the level he's talking about, said this horse messenger, glancing at his mare. Recalled to life, that's a blazing strange message. Much of that wouldn't do for you, Jerry. I say, Jerry, you'd be in a blazing bad way if recalling to life was to come into fashion, Jerry. Huh. So this is the person, the horse messenger. This is that person talking through the carriage door still at Jerry, who got back in. Apparently, he's a banker, he's something like that. So that person didn't like the message. 3, The Night Shadows. Now, some of you might say, well, why are you reading this book and what does this have to do with two different versions of reality? It is because you have the elites and the poor, right? And both are living side by side at the same time in conjunction with each other, totally incongruent, though, as to how things should be. And you have a lack of charity on one hand and just this hedonistic out attitude. You only live once, everything's in the now. You have this whole like excess and pleasure and hedonistic way of life. I think that if we look into and read books like this from our culture, it can help us to understand history better, just these little stories and people's individual stories in the bigger story format, but also from other places and other cultures. So we see, and I don't want to say we're like God, right? I don't want to say that, but like we can then look at our society or the time we're in like a game board from above and not be so emotionally involved. That's the trick, though. We shouldn't be so emotionally invested in what we're invested in. And we should have more empathy towards living, towards life. And we're seeing the same thing we're seeing in this story in France back in 1775. We're seeing today in our time. It's the same thing. And the saddest part is that it doesn't matter if it's holy wars, it doesn't matter if it's politics, it doesn't matter if it's education or religion. Forced conversion to or from anything that is forced doesn't work. The thing or person or being, the life form that you are trying to force and mold to be what you want to be or to live the way that you think they should live. Because what is perfection for you? Your perfect life isn't going to be my perfect life, and it shouldn't be. Maybe you're skilled in a trade like architecture, right? As much as I love architecture and I appreciate it, that's not my perfect utopia is me being some high class architect, right? This is where we have to understand our shared reality isn't supposed to be a utopia. It's more supposed to be a hub or venue for communication. That's all our shared reality really should be. Taking these events that may occur or maybe don't occur and then applying them and saying, well, we need new restrictions for our safety for this, that, and the other. And most people don't even realize we've already traded everything. Our lives are booked and managed mostly before we even get here. And it's going to take a different way to get, we're going to need a real different spiritual solution to the problems that got us here. The same way of thinking, the same way of being. And I'm an older person saying this. I mean, older by some people's standards, not by my standards or God's standards, but some people's. Um, there needs to be a new way. But we need to, every person, man, woman, child needs to choose their way. And if that means you have new people, that means you have new people. But we have to stop with the micromanaging of the laws, and most people don't understand legally speaking, DC only has power over DC. It's its own district. It's like its own little independent country. Whatever they do there, in all honesty, doesn't affect anybody. Nobody. If you want to be involved in politics, get local, because everything else is just celebrity, and it's just more bread and circus. It's more let them eat cake. The night shadows. A wonderful fact to reflect upon that every human creature is constituted to be that profound secret and mystery to every other. A solemn consideration when I enter a great city by night, that every one of those darkly clustered houses encloses its own secret, that every room and every one of them encloses its own secret, that every beating heart and the hundreds of thousands of breasts there is, in some of its imaginings, a secret to the heart nearest it. Something of the awfulness, even of death itself, is referable to this. No more can I turn the leaves of this dear book that I loved, and vainly hope in time to read it all. No more can I look into the depths of this unfathomable water, wherein, as momentary lights glanced into it, I have had glimpses of buried treasure and other things submerged. It was appointed that the book should shut with a spring, forever and forever, when I had read but a page. It was appointed that the waters should be locked in an eternal frost. When the light was playing on its surface, and I stood in ignorance on the shore, my friend is dead, my neighbor is dead, my love, the darling of my soul, is dead. It is the inexorable consolidation and perpetuation of the secret that was always in that individuality, and which I shall carry in mine to my life's end. In any of the burial places of this city through which I pass, is there a sleeper more inscrutable than its busy inhabitants are in their innermost personality to me, or than I to them? He's comparing himself to one of the dead because he's lost everyone. As to this, his natural and not to be alienated inheritance, the messenger on horseback had exactly the same possessions as the king, the first minister of state, or the richest merchant in London. So, with the three passengers shut up in the narrow compass of one lumbering old mail coach, they were mysteries to one another, as complete as if each had been in his own coach and six, or his own coach and 60, with the breadth of a country between him and the next. That's sad. That's how we are today. He's saying that's how hard it is to relate to somebody that you're right next to, sharing space with, that all you can do is wonder and have suspicion about them in your heart. Mm. The messenger rode back at an easy trot, stopping pretty often at alehouses by the way to drink, but evincing a tendency to keep his own counsel and to keep his hat cocked over his eyes. He had eyes that assorted very well with that decoration, being of a surface black, with no depth in the color or form, and much too near together, as if they were afraid of being found out in something, singly, if they kept too far apart. They had a sinister expression under an old crooked hat, like a three-cornered spittoon. All I can think of is Davy Jones on Pirates of the Caribbean. He's describing what this guy looks like, is basically what he's doing here if you're not following. They had a sinister expression over an old cocked hat, like a three-cornered spittoon, and over a great muffler for the chin and throat, which descended nearly to the wearer's knees. When he stopped for a drink, he moved his muffler with his left hand, only while he poured his liquor in with his right. As soon as that was done, he muffled again. "No, Jerry, no," said the messenger, harping on one theme as he rode. "It wouldn't do for you, Jerry. Jerry, you honest tradesman, it wouldn't suit your line of business." Recalled? Bust me if I don't think he'd been a drinking. So this guy, still with them, is reviling this Jerry guy, his boss, I guess, that he brought this information to, and he's not wanting to give this information back. He's like, this is a dumb response. I don't want to carry this back. So his message perplexed his mind to that degree that he was fain several times to take off his hat to scratch his head. Except on the crown, which was raggedly bald, he had stiff black hair standing jaggedly all over it, and growing downhill almost to his broad, blunt nose. It was so like Smith's work, so much more like the top of a strongly spiked wall than a head of hair, that the best of players at Leapfrog might have declined him as the most dangerous man in the world to go over. He's saying that's how chaotic his hair was when he took off his hat to scratch his head because he was confused by the message. While he trotted back with the message he was to deliver to the night watchman in his box at the door of Tellson's Bank by Temple Bar, who was to deliver it to get to greater authorities within, the shadows of the night took such shapes to him as arose out of the message, and took such shapes to the mare as arose out of her private topics of uneasiness. They seemed to be numerous, for she shied at every shadow on the road. So again, they want you to understand the kind of danger that's emanating from this situation altogether. What time the mail coach lumbered, jolted, rattled, and bumped upon its tedious way with its three fellow inscrutables inside, to whom likewise the shadows of the night revealed themselves in the forms their dozing eyes and wandering thoughts suggested. Tellson's Bank had a run upon it in the mail. As the bank passenger, with an arm drawn through the leather strap, which did he must I mean, he's got a lot of firepower with him. He must have money he's transferring or something. Like that's all I or he's very important. I mean, a bank teller, would he be that? Oh. Anyway, let's continue. With an arm drawn through the leathern strap, which did what lay in to keep him from pounding against the next passenger and driving him into his corner like a seatbelt. Whenever the coach got a special jolt, nodded in his place with half shut eyes, the little coach windows and the coach lamp dimly gleaming through them, and the bulky bundle of opposite passenger became the bank and did a great stroke of business. The rattle of the harness was the chink of money, and the more drafts were honored in 5 minutes than even Tellson's, with all its foreign and home connection, ever paid in thrice the time. Then the strong rooms underground at Tellson's, with such of their valuable stores and secrets as were known to the passenger, so he knows like where the vaults are and all that. And it was not a little that he knew about them. Opened before him, and he went in among them with the great keys and the feebly burning candle, and found them safe and strong and sound and still, just as he had last seen them. But though the bank was almost always with him, and though the coach, in a confused way, like the presence of pain under an opiate, was always with him, there was another current of impression that never ceased to run all through the night. He was on his way to dig someone out of a grave. So that's why he's on that's the whole reason for his journey. And that's why that guy's freaking out. Okay, so the messenger came. He brought him this message. We still don't know what it says, right? He went through the rain, through the mud, all this stuff. And he says, "We're called to life. What are you talking about? You can't. What do you mean?" He's going to dig somebody up. He wants to go dig somebody up. I don't know who's watching or if anyone will watch this far, but we've done lightweight, shallow investigations into people who've been buried alive, right? And we've talked about like what's going to happen because I feel like Satan wanted people buried, thinking with his erroneous mind that, hey, they won't be able to be resurrected because they'll be under 6 feet of dirt. Also, it deters anyone from digging them up to see what's inside the casket. Um, and I know there's a deception with death and morticians and with grave diggers. I just don't know what it is exactly. I think there's a couple. Anyways, in the beginning, he says they got great spiritual news from America, and it had carried all the way over to across the pond. Now we find out this dude, this cat, is armed to the hilt, right? And this little tiny caravan of people who happen to be traveling with the mail. Most people don't want to do that. Like that's you'll hire your own coach or whatever, especially people with money. But this is how he's traveling. It seems very ambiguous and anonymous, maybe, is why he's doing it. And all of this is so he can go actually literally dig somebody up. Because that's why this guy's freaking out about his message. He's like, "What do you mean we're called to life? You're going to do what?" He's going to dig this guy up. Guy, girl, whoever. Wow. And we've talked about this in relation to Satan's short season and the resetting of people. And MK Ultra and how allegedly they can like cloak your mind, give you like this fake amnesia type stuff. This is weird because it really is. And my dad gave it to me to read, and I don't like I remember everything I read, and I don't remember finishing this book. Of course, give me a break. I was like 12. All right. I will. How much is left of this chapter? Will it tell me? Probably not. Let's finish this chapter. So I got to take my dogs out. And today's Sammy's shower day, which is why I did this a little later today. Okay, so he's going to dig this guy up. Now, which of the multitude of faces that showed themselves before him was the true face of the buried person? The shadows of the night did not indicate, but they were all the faces of a man 45 by years, and they differed principally in the passions they expressed and in the ghastliness of their worn and wasted state. So he's kind of falling asleep in the coach or whatever in the conveyance, and so he's in the bank, he's going through everything that took him to get to the point, like, to dig this guy up. And so, like, as he's somewhat, like, lulled and, like, meditating, the people around him, he ends up seeing, like, this guy, like, is he gonna be, uh, decayed when he digs him up? Like, what's gonna be the state that this guy's in? So that's what he's thinking of right now, and he's kind of in that place in between sleep and awake. And again, it just comes with experience of reading older books like this. I don't want to assume people do know or don't know, so I translate when it seems appropriate. Okay. Pride, contempt, defiance, stubbornness, submission, lamentation succeeded one another. So did the varieties of sunken cheek, cadaverous color, emaciated hands, and figures. But the face was in the main one face, and every head was prematurely white. 100 times the dozing passenger inquired of this spectre, buried how long? The answer was always the same, almost 18 years. You had abandoned all hope of being dug out long ago. You know that you are recalled to life? They tell me so. I hope you care to live? I can't say. Shall I show her to you? Will you come and see her? Wow, this is more wild than I thought it was. The answers to this question were various and contradictory. Sometimes the broken reply was, wait, it would kill me if I saw her too soon. Sometimes it was given in a tender rain of tears, and then it was, take me to her. Sometimes it was staring and bewildered, and then it was, I don't know her, I don't understand. After such, so he's imagining how the next part of his journey could or could not go. After such imaginary discourse and imaginary conversation with the spectre, because he's halfway dreaming, the passenger in his fancy would dig and dig and dig, now with a spade, now with a great key, now with his hands, to dig this wretched creature out. Got out at last, with earth hanging about his face and hair, he would suddenly fan away to dust. The passenger would then start to himself and lower the window to get the reality of mist and rain on his cheek. Yet even when his eyes were opened on the mist and rain, on the moving patch of light from the lamps, and the hedge at the roadside retreating by jerks, and the night shadows outside the coach would fall into the train of the night shadows within. The real banking house by Temple Bar, the real business of the past day, the real strong rooms, the real express sent after him, and the real message returned would all be there. Out of the midst of them the ghostly face would rise, and he would accost it again. Buried how long? Almost 18 years. I hope you care to live. I can't say. Dig, 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 until an impatient movement from one of the two passengers would admonish him to pull up the window, draw his arm securely through the leathern strap, and speculate upon the two slumbering forms until his mind lost its hold of them, and they again slid away into the bank and the grave. Buried how long? Almost 18 years. You had abandoned all hope of being dug out long ago. The words were still in his hearing, as just spoken, distinctly in his hearing as ever spoken words had been in his life. When the weary passenger started to the consciousness of daylight and found that the shadows of the night were gone, he lowered the window and looked out at the rising sun. There was a ridge of plowed land, with a plow upon it, where it had been left last night when the horses were unyoked. Beyond, a quiet coppice wood, in which many leaves of burning red and golden yellow still remained upon the trees. Though the earth was cold and wet, the sky was clear, and the sun rose bright, placid, and beautiful. 18 years, said the passenger, looking at the sun. Gracious creator of the day, to be buried 18 years. And with that, we're going to end this part of reading. I will probably read more of A Tale of Two Cities. I read a little bit of Romans yesterday because, again, I feel like it relates to the times that we are in. I will make it visible on the channel if I don't do a video tomorrow. But as we get into winter or at least colder weather, I may start doing like readings at night and current events during the day. Um, I kind of change my rhythm as the seasons change. So the bit of gossip that I heard that America's going to have an open monarchy again, like it's going to be out in the open because for the past, it's been an experiment and it's been covert for however long. But allegedly, we have had or are going to have a monarchy over us. We could. And I don't like that phrasing. But legitimate monarchy with, I guess, people here that came from there and didn't want to be monarchy, but might be monarch. I don't know. But a little bird, another TI, said that there is royalty here in America, that they're going to offer it to this person. It almost sounds like the Princess Diaries, but it's not that. Um, because after she said this, she was ended. Like her life was ended. You can go look for the story if you want. It's been about a year and a half, but I something is in the air again about that, especially with things that are going on now. So again, just do not be baited into action, right? Because we don't really know what's happening. Do not emotionally invest yourself with characters on the screen. It's fine to pray for people, but we don't know these people. And they're really manipulating like whole giant groups of people right now. And we have people hating Christians and hating Muslims and saying that all religion is bad because it's sadistic and it leads to bloody wars. And you have Christians who are pacifists and who don't act like that. Then you have Christians who are loyalists, and then you have pagans who just want to have fun and want it to be all material. And then you have people fighting for the environment. I mean, let's breathe. Let's breathe. We can't do this without each other. Like, that needs to be very clearly understood. That is the one thing that we need to know as a group. We can't do this without each other. Sure, you can live a lone life. Sure, you can walk the lone walk. But as a whole, we need each other socially, heart-wise, spiritually, physically. We can't do this without each other. We need to stop being baited into fighting each other by characters on a screen that hold no sway over our lives. You say, but they're doing this, they're taking nobody's come and taken your freedom yet. You're still walking out the door doing as you choose every day. You don't have to go to work if you don't want to. There will be consequences, but you don't have to go do that job. Learn a skill. Be self-sustainable. Go live in the woods. What are they going to tell you? Nobody owns, like, it's not, again, a lot of this is what you believe. It's government, mind control. You are the one keeping you for the most part. Don't incite violence and don't be baited into violence. It doesn't need to go that road. And by all means, for the young people, do not allow yourself to be weaponized. I did a video on that like 2 years ago about how the youth was being weaponized. Don't allow yourself to be manipulated. You want treated like adults, you want people to take you seriously. Don't be manipulated by characters on a screen. It's really, we need to get back to basics again. And we do need each other. And things like this have happened throughout history over and over again. Let's learn something. Otherwise, I'm going to have to question our sanity as a species. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing all the time, expecting different results. How many times have people voted expecting something different to happen? It's never different. Everybody loves who they voted for about a month or two. Then they get into bashing that one. And somebody else is great. Until that person's actually in the office, then they bash that one. And on it goes while they kick the can down the road. For the people that need that to behave, let them have it. If they need bread and circus to not go out and do harm, let those people have it. But let's the rest of us, like, let's bring back intellectualism. Let's bring back creativity. Let's bring back honing our skills and becoming masters of skills. Just a few thoughts for you guys today. I had a really rough afternoon. I'm being asked to accept things and deal with things that most people, even my enemies, couldn't possibly say are normal. You just can't anymore. This is just not. I could call the literal health department for what's going on. I could call the EPA. Like, the place is in such dire straits, and I can't even get on a lease to say that I belong here or to ask the landlord, "Hey, fix this, I'm on a lease." Because there's nothing anymore guaranteeing any safety. Yet for the women, it's get naked, procreate, be an entrepreneur, have your own business, produce, 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 be efficient, efficient, efficient. Can we just stop for a minute? Can the women have time to work on our spirits and not constantly being keeping up with children and families in that way? Can you quit gaslighting everybody and calling us crazy when very clearly, and now that some of the truthers, I don't trust them, they're all saying fake alien invasion. I'm sorry, but I'm not so sure it's fake anymore. Like, I'm seeing too many things that are not they don't know how to pretend to be people. People aren't acting like people. There, I said it. They're doing things that are so beyond. And some of these people don't deserve the houses they're in. I've seen cleaner, neater, homeless people living in tents than some of the stuff I am forced to deal with. And I'm constantly cleaning and keeping up. Something is wrong with everybody. And I'm hoping that readings like this, that use evocative imagination and wording, evocative explanation of people's hearts and their feelings and struggle, I am hoping that it ignites something. Thank you so much for being here and spending time with me. Please comment in the comment section, at least so I know I'm not on a dead internet, because that's what it feels like. It feels like there's nobody else out there. And if that's the case and I figure that out, like, there's no point to this then. And so I leave and I go meet people in person. It'll suck. It'll be hard. Absolutely. But now that I know some of the rules about this place, and now that I know I'm sovereign, and now that I know I'm not going to hurt anybody, you'd have to go through quite a few natural laws to actually force people to do what they don't want to do. You guys know that. Know it. Know that you are sovereign. And then be responsible with that free will that you have. Do no harm. I love you guys. You have a blessed night. I'm going to go bathe my dogs, feed my dogs, and pamper my dogs. My best friends. Bye, guys. Thanks for being here. Did it really say 33? Gosh. Oh,